Do you believe in climate change?
No.
Why not?
Bullshit. Climate goes up and down. There's no such thing as climate change.
All of this with the global warming and that, a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax.
That is evidence, isn't it?
No, you go to the peer-reviewed literature. You're looking at anecdotal evidence.
They want to demonize me as some kind of antichrist, the opposite of a climate change religion, somebody who wants to destroy the planet.
This is Naomi Science. She is the face of the Heartland Institute, a think tank that spreads disinformation about climate change, on the basis that climate science has been corrupted. She is a climate denier and has been described as the anti-Greta. Who are climate deniers? What do they hope to achieve? And how do they use language to do so? That's what we're going to be talking about in this video. Most scientists agree on the reality of climate change, that the Earth's climate is changing for the worse and is anthropogenic, meaning that climate change is caused by greenhouse gases from human activity, like the burning of fossil fuels and the clearing of land. But climate deniers are skeptical of such scientific consensus, especially towards the second point about human-caused climate change.
Well, it's because we don't see the evidence for human-caused global warming.
Deniers generally have a preoccupation with hoax frames that may significantly compromise trust in scientific authorities. That means that deniers may trust in science, but they don't trust the scientists themselves.
Corrupted, what do you mean corrupted?
Being manipulated and by NASA?
NASA?
Yes.
After all, another term for climate denier is climate skeptic, and skepticism is a fundamental tenet of scientific inquiry. In fact, most deniers acknowledge that climate change is real, but dispute the fact that it's caused by humans. Instead, most deniers believe that climate change is mostly caused by the sun, and the rise in global temperatures are a natural occurrence that's not the result of human activity. But according to NASA, the warming we've experienced in recent decades is too rapid to be accounted for by any natural phenomenon involving the sun. According to historian Deborah Lipstadt, whose research focuses mainly on Holocaust denial, denial is often a movement that occurs as a defense of threatened ideologies. What ideology is the climate denial movement defending? It's the capitalist ideologies of economics and consumerism, the very ideologies that have allowed corporations to amass vast fortunes. It espouses that economic growth is a marker of success, and that amassing material wealth should be one's main goal in life. Such ideologies play a central role in causing climate change. The need for raw materials to create products motivates environmentally disruptive actions, like the proliferation of fossil fuels and the clearing of lands. Products are made to fulfill existing consumer demands, and consumer demand drives profit. These extrinsic motivations are anthropocentric, which claims that humans are above and are more important than anything else on Earth. The ideology of ecocentrism directly opposes this. Ecocentrism espouses that all things, including the natural world, are intrinsically valuable. Humans have to respect the inherent value of the environment and can't simply carry out harmful practices by claiming that they are beneficial to humans. This is especially bad news for the fossil fuel industry. A shift towards an ecocentric society puts its business at risk, so it's unsurprising that fossil fuel corporations, along with conservative think tanks, are prominent backers of the climate denial movement. In the face of ecological movements that seek to transform societies into more environmentally conscious ones, climate denial is, at its core, a defense of capitalist ideology motivated by politics and profits.
Well, what has happened is a new cult religion has been born on the issue of climate. They have actually an ideology or a religious belief system that makes them reject even the basic truth.
Climate deniers spread misinformation through doubt, often claiming that climate science is unsettled and requires the need for more analysis.
When you hear, for instance, a scientist saying the science is settled, you know that person has stepped out of the science.
This doubt occurs via language, specifically by metaphorically equating climate change to a false religion.
I have been labeled, mostly by the mainstream media, the anti-Greta Thunberg. And by that I think they want to demonize me as some kind of antichrist, the opposite of a climate change religion. I would rather see myself as an antidote to a cult of irrationality and panic.
These words convey the metaphor that climate change is a religion. Elements of what we know about religion maps onto climate change. More specifically, how deniers understand and perceive climate change is constructed by a general understanding of religion. Religions lie outside the realm of evidence-based reasoning, so they can never be proven to be objectively true or false.
When you hear a Ban Ki-moon saying life as we know it will cease if we don't do something, what is he referring to? To suggest that what's been going on for thousands of years is something we should suddenly be alarmed at also doesn't seem reasonable. It's very much a matter of the unchallengeable assertion. All religions have dogmas. Dogmas are not proven statements or assertions that cannot be challenged.
Hence, deniers claim that the science of climate change is inconclusive and unsettled. Religious followers have an unwavering faith and confidence in their beliefs. Therefore, deniers see believers as brainwashed people whose positions don't change even when debunked by new and overwhelming evidence. Finally, religious doctrines are generally seen as an invalid basis for reasoning in the secular world, where scientific inquiry is prioritized. Hence, climate believers and scientists are discredited as blind followers of an invalid ideology or conspiracies, while deniers who are enlightened by science are the ones who truly know what's going on. This also entails the framing that climate change is a hoax.
That's totally fake science.
Zeit metaphorically equates climate change to
A cult of irrationality and panic.
Cults frames the climate change not just as untrue, but as a hoax that's dangerous. Climate believers are therefore extremists who should be stopped. As the expressions cult, irrationality, and panic carry inherently negative sentiments, they are negative appraisal items that trigger the simplistic evaluation that the notion of human-caused climate change is problematic. Expressions can convey messages like climate change is caused by the sun and put them on a spectrum of facticity, from true to false, certain to uncertain. Words that express certainty, like absolutely certain or undeniably true, increase facticity, while words like fraud and conspiracy reduce facticity. Take, for instance, this blog post by a prominent climate denier about how a new analytical model that predicts polar bear extinction is scientifically implausible. Expressions like so-called, totally implausible, out of date, and discredited reduce the facticity of polar bear extinction. In fact, the author combines an intensifier, totally, with a negative adjective, implausible, to convey that the science is not just uncertain, but completely false. But that's not all. The author increases the facticity of her own assertions by presenting herself as a credible scientific expert. She describes herself on her website as a zoologist with more than 35 years' experience, and brings up her published work, describing it with the jargonistic Holocene history of Arctic animals. She adheres to academic conventions, providing in-text citations and a reference list to fit into the genre of well-researched papers. Finally, she also uses graphics provided by scientific organizations, such as this map of Hudson Bay polar bears, writing off their credibility, by simultaneously calling into question the facticity of climate scientists while asserting their own. Deniers challenge the conventional findings of climate scientists and raise the credibility of their own theories. The ideology of climate deniers is conveyed visually as well. This cartoon was published in the Augusta Chronicle, a daily newspaper based in Georgia, USA. It's a simple image at first glance. A climate alarmist is pointing at a wheel, but it's the text themselves that tell us what the image is about. First, the wheel is described as the Wheel of Climate Change, which is a reference to the game show The Wheel of Fortune, where players spin a wheel to arrive at random outcomes. This suggests that alarmists are trigger-happy extremists that rely only on the arbitrary nature of what's directly in front of them, and often have no scientific backing for their views. Second, the wheel's options feature natural phenomena with contrastive terms like no snow or heavy snow. This mirrors a typical game show, in which landing on either option can mean the difference between winning and losing. However, the third and most prominent text in the image, see, told ya, as said by the alarmists, demolishes the significance of all these options. Alarmists will point to any of the events that the wheel lands on, be it warm winter, or cold winter as proof of human-caused climate change. The view lands on warm winters in the image. The message is that warm winters could be a natural phenomenon that occurs randomly, much like the random result of spinning a wheel. Alarmists, however, would always identify and use certain features to support their false claim that human-caused climate change exists. The belief held by the cartoonists is that climate believers are individuals who only believe what they see. This image is a visual metaphor for the type of people climate believers are: unquestioning, naive, and unable to think for themselves.
I have been in touch with many climate activists, and I asked them, can you explain to me where the connection between CO2 and rising sea levels and climate phenomena, where there is this connection that everybody is talking about? Those climate activists are not scientists. And that's not how you do your research.
This entails that the words of climate believers cannot be relied upon, which ultimately leads to the evaluation that human-caused climate change is false. Finally, the alarmist is also looking directly at the viewer. According to Press and Van Leeuwen's The Grammar of Visual Design, this creates a demand image, for the viewer becomes a direct addressee whose attention is being demanded. By directly addressing the viewer, the alarmist attempts to also convince the viewer to accept his false claim, which suggests that alarmists are bent on spreading misinformation. Deniers generate doubts by constantly saying that climate science is unsettled and needs to be debated. Such doubts is conveyed linguistically and visually through blog posts, social media, and even mainstream news channels. This means that the fight for climate action no longer depends on scientific facts, but simply depends on whose voice is louder. Hence, we need to understand how deniers talk, to make clear that these communicative means, be it metaphors, facticity patterns, or images, are ways for deniers to spread doubts and misinformation. Then, we can identify and resist the stories being conveyed by the language of deniers.